highlights. It's been a really big, momentous, and mostly beautiful gathering. I saw one of the creators of machine learning and neural networks this morning declare with 100% certainty that machines will gain consciousness. And none of you reacted, and that made me more alarmed, right? What's going on here? I saw a space pioneer, Dr. Mae Jemison, remind us all that we live under one sky, under one roof, and remind us to connect with each other. I saw fruit used last night to make music, and it made it hard for me to eat that apple during lunch today because every time I took a bite, I heard it screaming, apple, apple. Like, fruit shouldn't talk, and if it does talk, it shouldn't talk in a self-aware kind of way. It's just creepy. There's been a lot of amazing news announcements out of I/O this year. We have Android Q updates, Flutter for the web, something called a Nest Hub Max, and of course, the biggest technical innovation, Dark Theme, which seemed to really excite the super geeks in the room, got you to glance away from your screens, so I should say Dark Theme. You're so easy. You're so easy. Now my presentation will run at 30% higher energy efficiency and push fewer pixels. So I was paying attention, I really was. I learned a bunch of things. I learned that NBU is Google's way of saying next billion users. That's how this company thinks about growth, a humble brag. The Pixel 3a is out, and we got privacy-ish, which I'm going to come back to later. So the first conclusion I came to after many of the sessions and overhearing people in lines was that machine learning is going to take all the human jobs. I saw very specific ones where machine learning algorithms outperform or nearly outperform humans in things like translation and transcription, in driving, in picking things up, and most interestingly of all, in developing machine learning algorithms. I want to show you a slide that I saw yesterday, which really, it looks kind of banal, but this is a terrifying image. The red curve is the performance of a machine learning algorithm built by a machine learning algorithm. The black line is what puny humans are capable of. And here's why that concerns me. I have assumed a level of self-interest and self-preservation on the part of the people designing and developing this new world we live in. So taking away certain jobs in occupations school, but not my job. And yet the people with the superpower are like, you know, it'd be cool to create a superpower capable of creating superpowers greater than my superpowers. Stop. You don't have to do it. Like, literally no one's making you do it. Do something else. Just a thought. Just a thought. That curve should be a warning line. We've gone too far. But at the same time, I had another opposite conclusion, which is that machine learning will bring us closer together. I spent a lot of time in the Experiments Dome. It's one of several domes here on planet I/O, and I witnessed and participated in some really beautiful uses of technology. I saw a conversation between two people, one of whom was hearing impaired, yet that conversation itself was not impaired at all. I took part in a dance lesson from one of the greatest dancers we as a species have ever produced, Bill T. Jones, thanks to the PoseNet algorithm. And I'm as good as he is now, as submitted by Exhibit A here. I would literally empty a wallet or max out a credit card if I could get personal dance lessons from Beyonce, right? That would be really successful. I met this developer, Ezra, from Egypt, and we made random beautiful art together using something called Rotavo. Now, I'm assuming this isn't some kind of weapon system, it's just used to make cute art, but we made this, and as I stared into it, I recognized it as a metaphor for the arc of human existence, and that we peak sometime around Candy Crush, and are now in the climate catastrophe decline unless we intervene. I also recognize that one of the greatest innovations of O'19 was to get hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of developers to go outside. Just go outside. And then be forced to exercise because everything is 1.3 miles apart from everything else. I've walked 30 miles in the past 2 days. I have calluses now. This was also a test of in what situations and circumstances will people stare at their screens. It turns out everywhere, including the digital detox zone. People are like, I'm here to tox. I don't know what you're here for. I'm a toxer. Or just sitting on the street with nothing else to do. Thank you, Yema, for the photo. And maybe I was one of the few to notice the sort of police overwatch situation. And as I took advantage of digital imaging technology and zoomed in, I realized there's not a human in this car. It's already here. Skynet starts with an empty police car overlooking a bunch of super powerful technologists creating the future. It's too late to run. Enjoy captivity. The greatest invention, though, other than dark theme, are these porta potties. Can we give it up for the Ultra Lab? Come on now, this is amazing. Actually bigger and better than my New York City apartment. So that's most of the reflection on I.O. Again, my full name is Baratunde Thurston, and I am here by way of this woman, Arnita Lorraine Thurston, who raised me and my older sister Belinda on her own, who was a multitude of people, a survivor of sexual assault, a paralegal, a computer programmer, an activist, an environmentalist. And it was her working as a systems analyst for the federal government in the early 1980s that brought the first computer into our house, a computer that helped introduce me to the early internet. Clap if you remember this internet. Yeah! Text, baby. No gifts, no cats, no ads. It was a simpler and beautiful time. And I witnessed and was a result of the power of technology to upgrade my life. My mother's financial life got upgraded, which meant my education, quality of food got better, and my sense of creativity, of literally what was possible, was powered by technology from an early age. This is an image of an article I wrote in high school in Washington, D.C. in 1993. Headline, Upper School Joins Internet, because we got a full-time, always-on T1 connection, which changed everything. And among the observations I had in this article, this one stood out to me. I wrote, students have used the computer room, because we segregated them back then, to write papers, solve math problems, conduct science experiments, and connect to local libraries and universities. All legal, make your mama proud type activities. What I did not anticipate was Fortnite, cyber attacks on our election system, selfies, or dark theme, of course. The path that I have walked has been enabled by what technology has brought to us. I registered my domain name in 1998. Most of the jobs I've ever had were directly influenced by or working with technology, including working for America's finest news source, The Onion, where I was, yes, for the good kind of fake news, yes. I was director of digital there for years. Right after that, I helped start a business which merged technology with humor and tried to bring a level of humanity to some of these cool tools. And our signature action was a series of hackathons that we called Comedy Hack Day. And yes, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, we got one person who knew about it. I'm very excited about it's a human connection. It was beautiful. Should do more of that. I like you. So we would bring developers and designers and comedians together to imagine and then build working prototypes of jokes. So someone once made a digital assistant, voice-enabled, but only in the body of a Furby that had to be attached to your shoulder. So you'd walk around with that. There was a team that made an app, which was for a long time in the app stores, called Equitable. And that would allow you to split your bill with friends after a night out. But it wouldn't split the bill equally. It would split the bill equitably, taking into account the pay gap based on gender and race in the United States. So different people would pay different amounts. It was reparations one meal at a time is what they called that. And then I helped in the first year of The Daily Show under Trevor Noah to reimagine how that now global institution deploys technology for more than publishing video feeds online, but to get way more interactive with its community and more creative with the possibilities for jokes. Now, technology can be very personal for all of us, and it has been for me through a little company up the road called 23andMe. As I mentioned, I have an older sister, Belinda. She's 9 years ahead of me in life in more ways than just age. She is also, we have different fathers. And after our mother passed away, we had even more questions that a living human couldn't answer. So we went to the great database of 23andMe, and I got incredible bragging rights thanks to the comparison capabilities within 23andMe. I got to be able to find out that I am less Neanderthal than my older sister. Clap if you're a younger sibling. If you're a younger sibling, we're the good ones. I'm just kidding. Everyone's good. But it is really powerful to be able to say to your older sibling, no, you're the Neanderthal. Because science, right? Like you have backup. But Big Sis had a genetic clapback I did not foresee. She said, that's cool, baby bro, but you're also way whiter than me. And I was like, no! Not that there's anything wrong with being white, room full of white people, but no! Like, I got a lot invested in the blackness thing. And this is way late, and how do I not know this, and what does that even mean? And it's extra awkward because I wrote a book called How to Be Black. Like, that's not, this kind of undermines my brand, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not good. I didn't write a book called How to Be 81.6% Black. That was a totally different book, not a bestseller, very different author. My life is mostly great, mostly incredible, because it's been filled with great and incredible people. And that includes, the end of last year, my then girlfriend proposed to me, and I had the good sense to say yes. So we are getting married, I'm engaged, it's very exciting. And I'm gonna take this opportunity to share with y'all in the world, we're starting a family. It's a very exciting time to do that. It's an Amazon family. And what we did is, it means we merged our Amazon accounts so she can use my Prime, but with her credit card. It's great innovation, and it really changes. It's just really nice to have our union recognized by Chairman Bezos, you know, head of one of the largest non-governmental military operations in the world. It's really cool to just be seen, truly seen, like that. There was a time when to create a child, which we are not actually doing, but to create a child involves a lot of physical work, but you all know disruption, machine learning, and Amazon makes it much easier to just add a child to your family. They've got a slick UX, and then you have a bunch of parameters you can fill out to kind of optimize your child for your particular situation. Now, I'm not a fan of the binary gender choice, but that's a simple update on the back end. So what I did is I created a little girl after my favorite roller derby character's name, Beyonce, and I just skipped those early years where you don't sleep, so she's almost 11 now, and she's a cute little unicorn. But once you've got a child, this is the beauty. Amazon gives you options. You can add another child, or if you're not happy, you can edit your existing child. I mean, clap if you ever wanted to edit a child, right? Like, that's an amazing, we need that IRL. You know? So you choose to edit the child, and when you click through, you're given even more dramatic options. Do you save the child, or do you remove the child? Right? Which I'm pretty sure is a human rights violation, but it's cloud-based, it's Amazon, who knows? It's beyond the jurisdiction of any government. That brings me to Waze, one of my favorite tools for always letting me know where I am, but denying me the knowledge of how to get anywhere. It's an amazing combination where I know less the more I know. And one thing I took a look at somewhat recently is just the level of chaos and mayhem that happens inside of Waze. I'm not sure how many of you all paid attention to what happens inside of Waze, but this is an average route through a busy Los Angeles interchange. But when you zoom in, you see violence. Like, there is a bloodthirsty, sword-wielding nut chasing royalty. There's someone laughing in the background, protected though, probably why they're laughing, and the police aren't doing anything about it. Oddly reminiscent, sadly, of what happens in the real world, so maybe Waze is actually real. When I got here to IO, I wanted to see what I could learn, see what some of the sessions were. And so I loaded the app onto my phone. I found out that the app is created by some unverified developer who wants access to view and edit all the events on my calendar. And once I just clicked through blindly through those permissions, I started searching. And I searched for machine, and I found so many options and things to learn about. I searched for ethics. I found one, which is better than zero progress. So y'all should definitely find the stream on that one and like embody everything in that session. And then I searched for avoid apocalypse, and I didn't find anything in the session. It brings me to a moment in my life 3 years ago. I was invited to South by Southwest Interactive. I'd been going for almost a decade at that point. And this particular year, they brought me in to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, joining people like Dana Boyd and Zay Frank and Kara Swisher. And in my brief acceptance speech, I made some remarks which I think are still relevant to the world we're living in today. I'm going to share a brief moment of that with you, and you can read along. I said to them, and I say to you still now, the algorithms are coming, and we know they aren't pure or objective. Like journalists, they're embedded with the values of their makers. They reflect the society around them. But if innovation is all about making the world a better place, and the algorithms and code that claim to do so derive from this very imperfect world, sick with racism and sexism and crippling poverty, then isn't it possible that they might make the world a worse place? Could we end up with virtual reality racism or machine-learned sexism? And today, could poverty be policed by drones and an internet of crap? Possibly, maybe, the answer is yes. So today we live in some version of the world that gives us headlines about social media disrupting our democracy, about yet another data leak from yet another organization taking advantage of access to information about us, about our legislators selling us out to ISPs who are selling us out to advertisers who are selling us out to brands who just want our money, about self-driving cars who literally can't see black people. That's terrible. About machine learning applied to resumes, which conveniently sort out all the women, because that's also what history has done, so we've just scaled that into our present and future. About an automated response system that was goaded into mentioning the N-word publicly on Twitter, and about the cloud-based apology company known as Facebook apologizing yet again for something it deservedly should apologize for. I have been working over the past year to try to integrate my own thinking around technology. I was a big booster in the 90s and early 2000s. I have seen the harms as well. And last year I wrote a bit of a manifesto. I went on a journey to try to understand how all my data existed amongst the major platforms, amongst app developers, amongst the very websites or web browsers that I visit and that I use. And what came out of that was a set of principles that I then open sourced with a Google Doc that others have contributed to help guide us more conscientiously into the future. And so I'm going to walk you through several of those principles and hope you take them in the spirit of generosity and embed them into the code and into the values as you go out and build this world that we all want to live in. The first is about transparency and what I call trust scores. Now, look, we all get a score from a system. We get credit scores from the financial system that determine if we can get a job, if we can get a home, if we can get a car. And I think it's time to flip that scoring system around to create something like a trust score, which rates the organizations that we are in relationship with based on how they handle us, how they handle our information, based on what's inside of the technology. And we have a good metaphor from the world of food. When I want to know what's in my food, I don't drag a chemistry set to the grocery store and inspect every item point by point. I read the nutrition label. I know the content, the calories, the ratings. This is possible, and with that knowledge, we can jump to another world and look at the building trades, where we get broad ratings of lead generation for sustainability and energy efficiency. I shouldn't have to guess about what's inside the product. I certainly shouldn't have to read 33,000 word legalese terms of service to figure out what's really happening inside. All of that should be as usable as the UX and systems that got me onto the platforms, into the apps, into the services in the first place. Now, the second principle is about defaults. Changing those defaults from open to closed, from opt-out to opt-in. Defaults matter, y'all. Most of us don't change the defaults. As in life, we accept mostly the world that we walk into. We accept the family beliefs, the religious beliefs, and the settings in the programs that we're using as far as what rights they claim to have with our data. I think we need to totally switch to a minimal data default, to something more akin to data conservation rather than data extraction and exploitation. There was a great series of guidelines and a model from Mozilla, which they call their lean data practices. I encourage you all to look at those and apply them and ask, do I really need this information about the customer, the user, the person, if you choose to call them a person every now and then? And maybe we should treat data like other things we want to limit: sugar, Netflix, Trump tweets, carbon, fossil fuels, and see how far we can go with how little of that information about the user as possible. That brings me to the third point about data ownership and data portability. Now, I think of this in a couple of different layers. I think about the data that I generate or the data that is derived from my actions, about the data of us and the data about us, about the content and the metadata. So when I take a photo and upload it, okay, that's mine. That's user-generated content. But when I walk from here to here and create a digital trail, a little history, that is also data of me. And I think we need to start living in a world where that is mine, where that is a part of me, where I have a level of sovereignty and self-determination. As I do with this body, so should I do with what this body represents in the virtual world. Because things are going both ways in business, they should go both ways in rights as well. And when we start to think about ownership of data in a more expansive way, it makes something like this a bit more interesting. These CAPTCHA codes, these little quizzes and tests to prove you're not a robot, which pretty soon we're all going to fail because the robots are going to design the test and then they're going to pass it. But I've identified so many hills and stairs and cars that I'm essentially a co-founder of Waymo and every other self-driving technology out there. We should all be considered co-owners and partners in the products and services that are being built. Machine learning depends on data. Artificial intelligence without data is artificial stupidity. So every user is also a contributor. This is much more of a cooperative economic model than a top-down capitalistic extraction and exploitation model. Let's have that framework in mind. And I know it's complicated, but so is everything else we've ever done. And we use technology for the express purpose of dealing with the complexity, of trying to abstract it and find ways to still approach it. Number 4, I think we should start shifting our terminology around permission, not just privacy. Privacy has this vague yet hard-edged binary feel. It's private or it's public, privacy or not. Permission has layers. When I think about permission, I think about the first Unix systems I ever used back at that high school, and the chmod command, chmod, changing the access permissions on directories, on files for users, groups, and others, including the owner. And I think we need to apply that as well to information about us. I'm cool entering into a relationship with a developer around this use for this app for this amount of time. That doesn't mean that 7 years from now, the business that created that app got acquired by a company I want nothing to do with, and they just automatically get me, right? I married you, not your cousin. It doesn't translate that way. So giving much more fine-tooth controls around what apps and technologies have permission to do, with whom, for how long, in what context, including location, will bring much more self-determination, control, and respect to the underlying relationship. And I can't talk about respect without talking about inclusion, systemic inclusion. We all live in this world of systemic exclusion. We're sitting atop centuries of all kinds of exclusion. And so where we are is a result in part of where our ancestors were, where the people who came before us were, of where the system that was designed by people put us. And we know too much now to say it's all equal for everybody. We literally have the data to prove that's not true. So we should be using that information to create inclusive systems across many dimensions. And I want to give some kudos to this organization and many others for the steps they've taken toward accessibility, which have gotten so much better than they have been. They can still get better still. Project Include is one such effort that's focused on the technology industry. They got literal workbooks that I think you should be using. It's not about charity for me. Doing the right thing is a good thing, but it's good for business, it's good for human rights, it's good for designing not just technology, but the world that we're all going to be living in. We're not operating in a vertical anymore. This stuff is infecting every area of life, and so if people from every area of life are not participating in the creativity and the construction of the rules and the systems, then they're subjects, not citizens. And that's not the type of world that I think any of us want to be living in. Number 6, imagine harder. I want everyone to think actively about what the worst thing that can happen with your technology is. Don't just think about the hockey stick and the valuation and the user growth and the delightful personas and testimonial stories come to life when something goes well. Think about the tragedy and the horror if something can go wrong. And then use this tool, Ethical OS, developed in partnership with Omidyar and a bunch of other organizations, to literally come up with a framework to think about worst case scenarios and how to manage against them. One of my favorite examples from their workbook says, could your product or business do anything your users are unaware of? If so, why are you not sharing that with them? Would it pose a risk to your business if it showed up in tomorrow's news? If you'd rather it not be written about publicly, maybe you're ashamed of it. Maybe someone in the organization is ashamed of it, and that is not a good way to operate in, again, any relationship. Number 7, we've got to break open the black box. So much of what is happening with technology is beyond us, almost literally beyond comprehension. So we've got to start building in ways to understand what seems to be not understandable. There's an analogy in food inspectors in that industry, and auditors in the financial industry, in peer review and academia. We rarely just let people skate by. So please start building in even more ways to inspect, interrogate, and measure the impact of the tools we're building. When someone commits a driving under the influence offense, a DUI or DWI, we take away the car, at least for a certain amount of time. I would love a world where someone abuses the data of millions of users and so was not allowed to continue to have access to the data of millions of users. That's the most logical approach that we take in every other area of life. Technology is just another area of life. And the New York Times launched an experience last week that did this for advertising. I can't be here and not talk about advertising. We're here because ad money. 84% of the Google's money is ad money. So let's talk a bit more about how those ads even get made. What the Times did was pretty brilliant. They bought an ad campaign, and the content of the ads was revealing how those ads were derived, as in what that ad buyer knew about the user when they booked the ad in the system. Here's one example. This ad thinks you're trying to lose weight, but still love bakeries, as derived from browsing history, probably, and credit card history. That level of opaqueness, if more of us understood that, not just as the creators of the tech, but the users of it, we'd want some more breaks, some more visibility, some more controls to prevent that. That's probably a bit too much. We can trust, but we need mechanisms to verify. We also need to upgrade and enforce the rules around all of this. Again, I return to the idea of once you identify abuse, you stop the underlying abusive behavior. You don't just say, please don't do that again, and I trust that you will mind your own business. So I'm glad to see the industry calling for regulation. We need independence as that comes into play. Finally, this is the 9th and final for now principle, and it's actually the more inspiring one to me. But I think of this as encouraging folks to think beyond just consumption. a lot of the models that were designed, the business models and the technical models to support them, was about getting people to spend time with, to log on for longer, to spend money with, to suck life out of, to consume. And I say, let me do what you do. I remember the first time I used the ad buying capabilities of one of the platforms where I was merely a user. And I saw my friends in a much more empowering and interesting way. I could slice and dice them. I could understand them in a way that I couldn't as a friend. I could only see them that way if I chose to see them as an object, as the target of an advertising campaign, both enabled by this platform. Let's close that distance and allow creativity on the part of the users, the contributors in this new world that I'm imagining. Here's a couple of examples of beautiful things that have been done with technology that allow us to see ourselves a bit more honestly and a bit better. There's a group called the Equal Justice Initiative, which does great work around unearthing and revealing some of the dark history of the United States with respect to racial terror lynchings. They partnered up with Google, google.org, to build Lynching in America as a virtual experience to accompany their museum in Montgomery, Alabama. There's the Center for Policing Equity, which is bringing machine learning and big data analysis to one of the most painful and intractable problems in this country, which is discriminate use of police force, where we know that police use force far more disproportionately against black people than against white people. Science and math are helping us understand why, and with police are reducing that delta. In New York City, where I lived for 12 years, Just Fix NYC is putting power in the hands of tenants to argue against their slumlords, especially tenants in low-income and public housing. So they can do things like get repairs in their apartments, find out who owns the building, respond to an eviction notice. This tool is using that power with a more of a sense of Spider-Man rules, right? You can think about the ability of all of this to create power, to create wealth, and then ask, for who? Who needs it more? Who needs club music banging right now? Clearly we do, because we just got it. I timed that perfectly to have like a club underbeat to my super serious moral talk at the end of the section. But yeah, make sure that these tools are not merely accruing wealth and power to the already wealthy and powerful. That's not a fun world. That's a fun world for like 6 people, literally 6 people, and the rest of us suffer in that. So I'm going to leave you with some resources, some things you can follow up with. All these slides are online, baratunde.com/GoogleIO. They're in a Google slideshow, and you can download them and manipulate them to your own degree. But I want to talk through ethicalos.org, do that, .everyone.co.uk, the Data and Society Research Institute out of New York City, where I'm an advisor, the AI Now Institute, which asks deep questions and does independent study of some of these systems, Project Include, which I already mentioned, and then a couple of books. Winners Take All by Anand Giridharadas. Read that, yo. The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, read that first. And an inspirational twist on all of this that goes back much farther than either of those two is a book called Decolonizing Wealth. And it's based on the ideas of indigenous wisdom brought to bear on a system that we've built, which is, again, very extractive, very exploitative, but could be much more contributory, circular, and balanced. For inspiration, The Verge has a beautiful podcast series called Better Worlds, which I think of as an inverted Black Mirror. It's thinking of positive futures that we can use with this technology and actually giving you characters and narrative to be able to inhabit. The biggest book of all, Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever to reverse climate change. I think if you're not working on the climate crisis, do that. It's like the biggest problem that connects all the other problems, and there's so much being done right now to improve energy efficiency and use machines to find these spots. We can do and should be doing a lot more. To me, these are questions not of tech, they're questions of life and reality and of power. And as we're building these things, we're also building the world we're going to live in where we coexist. And so ask, what's the world I want to live in? What's the world you want to live in? What's the world we want to live in? Let's imagine harder and imagine better and build that world. Thank you very much. I'm Baratunde Thurston, Wakanda Forever. Enjoy the rest of I.O. Thank you, live stream.